Nigeria, who's gonna tell us a little bit about organizational ownership in this process. We also have an experience for Sierra Leone, in where we have Paul Mayanja, who's gonna tell us about tailored technical support throughout the process. And we have Abdulkar Ali, who's gonna help us understanding better how to catalyze sustainability from experiences in Somalia. We are then going to have a Q&A. So please, at any moment in where you think you have a problem, a question, or a doubt, go down to the Q&A little button down in your screens, and I'll be collecting those. And by the end of all of our presenters, I will be asking them some of your questions. Finally, we're gonna have some closing remarks by Merten Sievers. He's the Global Coordinator for Inclusive Markets and Entrepreneurship in the ILO. So, yeah. So let's start. Charlene and Adriana, the floor is all yours, Charlene. Tell us what we wish. Your mic is in mute, Charlene.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Thank you, Fernando. Thank you all for joining the discussion today. I'm going to provide you with a brief overview of the WeCheck process, trying to answer 3 quick questions about what is WeCheck, why WeCheck, and how is WeCheck new. For those of you who are familiar with the ILO-wide tools, WeCheck was formerly known as Female and Male Operating Small Businesses. And the methodology that we are going to present today is the result of a revision process supported by Value for Women and Gender Research Alliance, including also lessons learned from pilot in Algeria, Sierra Leone, and Somalia. So what is the WeCheck? WeCheck is an organizational assessment tool designed to guide business development service providers, public and private, financial and non-financial, in integrating in their product, services, processes, strategies, and overall organizational culture, the principle of inclusiveness and gender equality as a means for them to enhance their performance, impact, and sustainability. Why WeCheck? The answer is simple: to provide better services for women entrepreneurs. Evidence are there. It has been shown that if women entrepreneurs are adequately supported, they can boost the global economy by 5 trillion, which can't be more relevant than in the current context of COVID-19, where economies are looking for ways to recover and to just build resilience. And this also means that women entrepreneurs can really drive full and productive employment for all. And looking from the ILO perspective, this can support the ILO Decent Work Agenda and also the Future of Work initiative. And looking beyond at the UN level, it can also help advance the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development Goals, especially on the goal number 5 and goal number 8. And it's not a secret that the majority of the jobs created worldwide are made by SMEs. But within this group, and in 40 countries, 40% of countries globally, women's early stage entrepreneurial activity is half or less than half of what of men. And when we are looking at the labor force participation, things are not getting better. And the same also applies to the gender pay gap. Women continue to be paid on average 20% less than men in terms of remuneration of their work, where they are employed in existing enterprises, and also remuneration of their capital when they are running their own businesses. So by doing the WeCheck process, BDSPs can really contribute to unlock the potential of women entrepreneurs, and at the same time, improve their own performance as a businesses, BDSP, and also generate positive social and economic development outcomes. How is WeCheck new? So I told you previously that WeCheck is a revised methodology of Famous Check, and we have 5 elements that shape this new methodology. First of all, the objectives. When we start the WeCheck process and support BDSPs in conducting this assessment, they have to define clear objectives on why they are conducting the WeCheck process. This also is a way for them to own the process and to also think about sustainability moving forward. And these objectives should balance between social and economic outcomes, looking at the one end on quality and demand-driven services for women entrepreneurs, and then at the other end on improved performance for themselves. And the union of the two should generate systemic development outcomes at the level of enterprises, with women entrepreneurs being empowered and that their businesses are productive. At the market level, looking at the BDSPs themselves with sustainable business models that can also trigger a kind of vibrant market dynamic. And at the policy level, to see how this effort can also converge toward framework conditions for conducive entrepreneurial ecosystems, as well as affirmative and active employment creation policies and practices. The second thing is about the assessment areas. Famous Check was shaped around 6 topics that are now being simplified in 3 key assessment areas WeCheck is looking at. First of all, on client and the outreach, to see how the BDSP can increase their market share and outreach by conducting the WeCheck process. Product and services, looking at how the BDSP can improve their performance in terms of more revenues or reputation in their businesses, depending on if they are for-profit making organization or non-for-profit making organizations. And then we have the strategies and operation to look at the commitment to gender equality and how this can be also recognized internationally. The third element, new element in the WeCheck, is clarity about the actors involved in the process. We have 4 key actors. First of all, the BDSP, which undergoes the WeCheck process. And within the BDSP, we also have 3 key roles: the senior management, the internal task team, and the internal task team lead, who serves as a liaison officer between other ITT members and also the senior management. And the ITT lead also serves as a liaison between the BDSP and the external process facilitator, a specialist in enterprise development and gender issues, who supports the WeCheck process. And this external process facilitator is hired by the process initiator, an entity who initiates the WeCheck process. It can be the BDSP itself, it can be an external stakeholder, it can also be the ILO. And then we have the ILO, the custodian of the methodology, providing technical assistance to all the actors involved and also certifying some of them at a certain point of the process. The fourth new element in the WeCheck process, Adriana, the slide before, it's the certification. So the ILO certifies 3 key actors: the BDSP, the internal task team members, and the external process facilitator. So the BDSP is certified as a gender responsive BDSP at the satisfactory completion of the WeCheck process. ITT members also receive a certificate at the completion of the ITT training and also at the submission of the WeCheck action report. And then we have the external process facilitator, who also received a certification of recognition as skilled and competent to support such a process. And the fifth thing, novelty in the WeCheck process, is a step-by-step guidance provided by the tool, and this is supported by two manuals that my colleague Adriana is going to provide more detail on during the next section. So up to you, Adriana.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for passing on to me, and thank you, Fernando, for the introduction. So as Charlene mentioned, I'll be walking you through the WeCheck process and also providing an overview of the WeCheck materials. So as Charlene mentioned, we have two core materials to guide the WeCheck process. The first is the WeCheck implementation guide, and this guide is kind of the core of WeCheck. It introduces what WeCheck is, provides a broad overview of all the steps and actors involved, and it also outlines which actors are involved for each of the steps and in what capacity. It also provides extensive guidance on the certification process for BDSPs, members of the internal task team, and for the external process facilitator. So the WeCheck implementation guide really is the guiding document for WeCheck, and it is complemented by the tools manual, which provides a very detailed overview and a step-by-step for all of the components of WeCheck. So one of the core components of this WeCheck tools manual is the key assessment questions. And the key assessment questions are a set of yes or no questions for each of the three assessment areas that Charlene mentioned before. And every question that is answered as no indicates that this is an area for potential action. So for example, one of the key assessment questions is if the BDSP collects sex disaggregated data on their clients and beneficiaries. So if the answer to this question is no during the assessment phase, then this signals that this is an area that the BDSP could potentially improve. Then we also have key performance indicators in the WeCheck Tools Manual that the BDSP can use as a guidance to measure how well they're performing in terms of gender sensitive and gender responsive products and services. And we also provide very clear guidance and sample exercises for each of the steps. So for example, there are sample questionnaires, there's detailed guidance on data analysis tools like SWOT analysis and Chapati diagrams. So it's really an in-depth guide of how to conduct the WeCheck process. And finally, because WeCheck also entails a series of workshops, the WeCheck Tools Manual also provides agendas and some proposed templates for these workshops. So WeCheck is a three-step process, and it can take between 6 months to a year. And this is dependent on the scope of the assessment and also on every BDSP, because the process with every BDSP, as we'll hear from colleagues in the field, is quite different. So step one is a preparatory phase, and the main objective of this step is to ensure that all the actors are aware of the WeCheck process, that they have an understanding of all of the steps, and that we plan for conducting the assessment. So as a first step is senior management engagement, and this step ensures that senior management knows what WeCheck is and can also define objectives that are specific to their organizations of what they want to achieve by implementing WeCheck. Once senior management has been engaged, the ILO selects an external process facilitator to support the process, and the BDSP appoints an internal task team who will be guiding the assessment. And because the internal task team plays such a key role in WeCheck, this phase also includes a full-day training workshop for the internal task team to familiarize them with the WeCheck process and with the tools manual. And the outcome of this training workshop is a WeCheck plan. And this WeCheck plan is basically a roadmap for conducting the assessment. It outlines all the methods, resources, and timelines for data collection and data analysis, and is really the core outcome of this step. And once this WeCheck plan has been developed and validated by senior management, it's communicated across the organization, and particularly with individuals who might be interviewed or whose work areas are directly related to those key assessment areas. The next step is the self-assessment, and this is perhaps the most work-intensive part of WeCheck. And this self-assessment revolves around those key assessment questions that I mentioned before. So in this self-assessment, the first step is to collect data, and this first takes place through desk research. So we prioritize desk research, and this means looking at the type of documents and reports and resources that the BDSP already produces. So we can, for example, look at beneficiary and client profiles, any project reports, any policies to really inform and answer these key assessment questions. And wherever information needs to be complemented, we can move on to field research. And for WeCheck, we provide guidance on surveys with clients and beneficiaries, focus group discussions, and key informant interviews. But really, this revolves around those key assessment questions, and research really focuses on justifying those yes or no answers. So if we go back, for example, to that initial key assessment question of if the organization collects sex disaggregated data and the answer is no, then something we could look at would be beneficiary profiles or entry forms and entry questionnaires to validate this answer. And the outcome of this self-assessment is the WeCheck Action Report. And what this WeCheck Action Report does is that it summarizes the findings from the assessment in those 3 focus areas, and it also proposes a set of actionable recommendations to be implemented in the 3rd phase. And this WeCheck Action Report is validated by senior management, and senior management also has to prioritize those action areas. And once this action report is finalized, we officially launch it, communicate it with the BDSP, and can often engage in further resource mobilization for its implementation. The 3rd and final stage of WeCheck is the implementation of the action plan itself. So here we implement pilot activities, and throughout their implementation, we monitor and we learn. So the BDSP would be responsible for monitoring the implementation of these activities, learning from them, and this is often done through those key performance indicators outlined in the tools manual. And here the BDSP would then learn from this pilot and be able to adjust their action report, and then be able to modify their interventions based on that. At this stage, the BDSP also prepares for certification by the ILO. And what we really want to emphasize about WeCheck is that it's not a one-off implementation process. Instead, WeCheck is meant to be a first step towards a cycle of continuous improvement, of revision and innovation. So once that pilot is finalized and the report is adjusted and adapted, and the activities are kind of consolidated and adapted based on lessons learned, they can be implemented again, monitored and measured again, learned from, and then inform further adaptations towards more gender responsive service provision. And with that, I'll pass on to Fernando, who will also introduce you to our field colleagues.
Thank you very so much, Adriana and Charlene, for a very clear explanation on WeCheck. Please, if you have any question, doubt, again, I invite you to go to the little button down in your screen in the Q&A and write them up, and I'll be collecting those questions to our Q&A session once our speakers are done. Yeah, so let's do some traveling. So let's start in Algeria. We have Jo the Hollander. Hello, Jo. Jo's gonna talk to us a little bit about how to generate buy-in from the organization. So Jo, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Fernando. Hello, everyone. I am Jo the Hollander, and I'm in charge of partnerships and resource mobilization in the ILO Algiers office that covers the Maghreb. So I work at the Algerian government agency ANSEJ, which stands for National Youth Employment Agency, and supports young women and men from tertiary education institutions to consider entrepreneurship as a career option. So it first of all provides them with entrepreneurship training through the ILO's Start and Improve Your Business program. It then supports them to develop bankable business plans and provides them with seed money or facilitates access to existing financial services to launch their startups. So ANSEJ observed that at the entry of their entrepreneurship development programs, at least 80% of the candidates were young women. However, at the exit, only 17% of business plans developed were defended by young women. So with them, the ILO came up with a project, the overall objective of which was to support ANSEJ in promoting young women and men's entrepreneurship development. And when the ILO discussed the WeCheck process with ANSEJ's senior management, Their objectives for the WeCheck were very clear. They wanted a process which would produce an evidence-based action report that would inform affirmative actions towards increasing female participation in their entrepreneurship development schemes from 17 to 40%. So senior management also wanted the action report to propose concrete approaches on how to encourage meaningful representation of young women from disadvantaged areas in sectors that are priority, productive, and growth oriented. So with this clear guidance from senior management and their organizational commitment to the WeCheck process, ANSEJ appointed an internal task team comprised of 10 middle managers to undertake the assessment. Each team member allocated 1 working day per week to collect data, analyze data, and produce the action plan with guidance from senior management, with the support of a local external process facilitator hired by the ILO, and of course with the technical supervision by the ILO. So at the end of the assessment phase, the team produced a detailed action report outlining strategies for meeting the senior management's objectives. And the 5-year action report identified the key issues in each of the areas of assessment that Adriana presented and suggested targeted interventions that I will summarize in the 3 sections. So first of all, concerning clients and outreach, the team found that ANSEJ's communication strategies were not gender sensitive and did not specifically target women entrepreneurs. It was just decided that they would develop a gender sensitive communication strategy and that they would develop and implement a perception survey to better assess the needs of young women entrepreneurs. Secondly, concerning products and services, the team found that none of the tools, products, or services were gender sensitive. Yeah. So the team suggested to sensitize management on the need for gender responsive approach in entrepreneurship development schemes, to reinforce the understanding of gender issues by ANSEJ staff themselves through training workshops in both its headquarters and branches throughout the country, and to mainstream gender in product design as well as in entrepreneurship training and support. For instance, ANSEJ trainers were trained in a more gender-sensitive version of the Start and Improve Your Business program that integrates specific modules from the ILO's Gender and Entrepreneurship Together program and incorporates coaching techniques and peer-to-peer support for entrepreneurs. Lastly, concerning strategy and operations, the team found that ANSEJ did not have a gender-sensitive monitoring and results measurement system in place. It was thus proposed to create such unit, which would of course be gender responsive, to conduct workshops for personnel on gender sensitive evaluation, and to conduct a periodic gender sensitive qualitative evaluation for their operations and internal processes. So last point on the way forward, after ANSEJ's senior management validated the report and prioritized the proposed actions, ANSEJ allocated internal resources to pilot inception activities stemming from these recommendations. So the agency is currently integrating lessons learned from the pilot. It is preparing for certification by the ILO, and it has engaged in further resource mobilization, both internally and externally, to implement the full action report with the support of the ILO. So the experience of ANSEJ demonstrates the importance of engaging senior management and having a dedicated internal task team with sufficient time, resources, and guidance to conduct the assessment. So part of the success of the WeCheck in ANSEJ stems from having the organization take ownership of the process, resulting in clearly defined objectives, a committed team, and adequate resources. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Yo, so much. And we're gonna keep traveling. We're gonna go a little bit southern to Sierra Leone, where we have Paul. Hello, Paul. Paul is gonna tell us a little bit about how to better understand women entrepreneurship business needs to develop effective services to support them. So, Paul, I leave you with our lovely crowd.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. And thanks for having me. I'm a manager with ILO in Sierra Leone, and I'll talk about the WeCheck process, especially with the help of an external process facilitator. Particularly, we've been working with two institutions, that is National Youth Commission and Simbaru Community Bank, which is part of Apex Bank, where we engaged external process facilitators to provide tailored technical services and support for capacity development in the WeCheck process. The two institutions are part of ILO's support through the SME Development Project and also the Women Economic Empowerment Project that is funded by the Peace Building Fund of the UN. National Youth Commission is a government body that was set up with the principal objective of institutionalizing and empowering young women and men in all levels in decision making. NICOM has the mandate of helping the youth build skills, from life skills to entrepreneurship, explore opportunities for building talents of youth, and support them in a wide range of business development services. And Simbaru Bank is part of the Apex Bank. The Apex Bank was founded to provide financial services to rural communities, and the aim is mainly to support the agricultural sector. And the Apex Bank works through financial service associations at chiefdom and district level, and also community banks like Simbaru, which is one of the banks in Eastern Sierra Leone in a district called Kenema. On the process with NICOM, we started in March 2019, where sitting with senior management, we agreed on broad objectives for a better understanding of how effective NICOM is in outreach initiatives with the youth, and also how relevant its services are to young men and women. And with Simbaru Community Bank, we are looking at one of the banks in the Apex network with the aim of checking on its services to find out whether they are inclusive, whether they can report gender disaggregated data, because we want to use that to build a business case to offer better financial services to women entrepreneurs. With the results that we'll get from Simbaru Community Bank, we'll be able to replicate that in the whole network of Apex Bank, which will improve on service delivery. So NICOM and Apex Bank were the first two business development service providers and financial institutions to pilot the renewed, revised WeCheck methodology. And the experiences from these two organizations has significantly informed the development of the materials that have been shared with you by earlier presenters. There's been some developments, the achievements as far as NICOM is concerned. We are at a level where we are finalizing the WeCheck action plan. And that plan proposes key activities to improve outreach, improve service delivery, and also activities that will lead to partnerships with financial institution service providers, and also fill financing gaps that were reported by the beneficiaries. NICOM will be conducting workshops on gender for NICOM staff, and also mainstreaming gender across its internal processes. They have developed a gender policy to entrench gender issues in their services provision. With Simbaru Community Bank, ILO has commissioned an external process facilitator who is located close to the bank and will be providing hands-on support to the community bank, working with them. The external process facilitator is well resourced in gender terms and enterprise development issues. What are the key lessons learned? We have 4 key lessons learned. The first one is that the organization that is being supported has to be keen, motivated, and ready to conduct the WeCheck process. And it has to have the requisite personnel with the requisite skills to be able to coordinate this process. The second learning is that the external process facilitator has to be well versed with the process. They have to be independent, objective, and available to offer the organization support as they undergo the WeCheck process. The third lesson is that no one size fits all. Depending on the organization and the internal task team, the level of support required from the external process facilitator will vary. And the role of ILO as a key process initiator or custodian of the methodology is to ensure that the external process facilitator applies adaptive management principles to ensure that the motivated organization successfully undertakes the WeCheck process. And fourth, is that the external process facilitation can be done either remotely, as was done in the case of NICOM, or it can be done face-to-face. With the remote facilitation, we're able to use WhatsApp, Zoom, Skype, and all other technology channels. And that is, I think, relevant, especially in the current COVID pandemic context where you don't have face-to-face interaction. But for the Simbaru Bank, they will have direct on support with hands-on with the external process facilitator. So last but not least, would recommend continuous external process facilitation in carrying out the WeCheck process as a key success factor for this process. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Paul, for being with us. Let's travel east of Africa now to the other side of Africa, to Somalia. We have with us today Abdul Kadir Ali. Hello, Abdul. How are you? Your mic is off. Hello, Abdul. How are you?
Thanks, Fernando. I'm well. How are you?
I am very fine. Abdul is going to be talking to us about some strategies that business development service providers can take to develop and promote sustainable services. So, Abdul, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Fernando. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Abdul Qadir Ali. I work with the ILO Somalia program. I manage enterprise and skills-related programs here in the country, and I'm actually based in Mogadishu, Somalia. So when we talk about Somalia, I mean, people have different perceptions of the country. So let me actually give you a few pointers on the country as well. So despite many years of civil war in the country, I mean, Somalia is now transforming from conditions of conflict, drought, and other disasters to actually become a country, a state which is actually able to provide adequate support to its citizens and for social and economic, political well-being as well. Over the past few years, the country has actually made some progress, and there's actually now a stable government, and which is a sign of the better things which are actually to come for the country. As it's common among the developing countries as well, women are also an integral part of the labor market for Somalia. However, due to traditional and environmental factors, women are actually deprived of education, skills, and the right conditions to earn actually for them a living or also support their families. Mostly women are engaged in formal and informal self-employment activities without much support from any of the institutions which are actually present in the country. Coupled with this, also the recent work deficit of gender disparity in representation and treatment in the employment sector. This is besides the challenges of integrating and mainstreaming women and youth in the labor market. Furthermore, from the assessments which have been conducted by the many organizations which are available in the country, including ourselves, the ILO, women are particularly lagging behind in all the development indicators, particularly now in terms of now the economic activities and representation. And also, if you keenly look at now the levels of employment to population ratio for males to female are generally higher than that of females. And also on the other hand, most of the PDSPs in the country have become donor-driven and donor-dedicated organizations, and rather than demand or market-driven, as they have to usually compete over the scarce internal resources and for donor funding, which is actually a big problem in the country. What this has meant over the past few years is that their accountability is usually, I mean, focused upwards towards donors rather than downwards to meeting the demands of women and men entrepreneurs. These actually, and I think you might agree with me, these market distortions can be detrimental for the private sector development interventions and to the entrepreneurship ecosystem, because this now, I mean, a huge problem. I'm not sure about other countries, but that we are seeing in Somalia. Top-down interventions may actually fail to provide targeted services to entrepreneurs as well. So looking at all these problems, I mean, as the ILO Somalia, how are we actually intending to help with these kind of challenges? The ILO in Somalia, with the financial support from SIDA, is implementing a 4-year project with a component on women economic empowerment. And this very WeCheck process is actually implemented under this component. Just a little bit talk about now the project itself. The main objectives is to actually support the PDSPs to kind of develop sustainable business models that benefit both women entrepreneurs and the PDSPs, at the same time leveraging on the market for gender responsive business development services, and at the same time also contributing to socio-economic growth. And also in this context, we were able to actually launch a WeCheck process for 10 financial, non-financial PDSPs and CSOs in Somalia for two of the cities, that's in Mogadishu and Garowe. So this is actually, talking about Somalia and its dynamics, it is actually an interesting country to actually, pilot the WeCheck tool. So looking at now the sustainability models that we, and how far we have gone, and right now what we intend to achieve in the next few months. Initially, the project took specific measures to actually incentivize and enable the PDSPs to actually adopt some more market-driven approaches to service provision, using the WeCheck as a key tool to actually identify the needs of women and men entrepreneurs and develop more targeted products, services, and processes as well. So firstly, it has been very interesting actually is the participation of the PDSPs in the WeCheck process was made voluntarily. PDSPs were actually identified through a competitive process, and they were provided with the relevant information about the WeCheck, and those willing to apply were actually selected on the basis of their technical capacity to actually conduct the WeCheck process. Secondly, there are no financial support or compensations which are provided to PDSPs, other than to support the WeCheck process in terms of now data collection, data analysis, and report writing as well. This is actually, in our thinking, is to ensure that the organization retains the ownership of the process, and they get further encouraged to their commitment to the process. Thirdly, the project is further providing non-financial support to following the assessment that we have conducted, so that these PDSPs can actually implement the WeCheck action report in order to achieve the sustainability at 3 key levels. And these 3 key levels are at the organizational level, at the financial level, and at the technical level. So if we look at each of those 3 levels, at the financial level, finalized action reports are actually presented in a public event, which is usually attended by women and men entrepreneurs and key stakeholders. This also further includes the donors and also the investors who actually have an interest to this process. And this is to actually introduce them the improved market-driven products, processes, and services as well. A marketing and in line with this process as well, a marketing and fundraising campaign geared towards women entrepreneurs and potential donors and investors is officially launched to help them mobilize resources and at the same time expand the PDSP's client base with the ultimate goal of actually, helping improve their performance. At the technical level, what we are doing is that actually supporting the PDSPs to develop relevant financial and financial business development services based on the action reports using the ILO's tools and approaches. We further support them, actually the PDSPs, to meet the quality and certification requirements and to adopt market-driven and gender-sensitive approach. So apart from those 2 levels, something that's also very key is now the kind of support that we provide at the organizational level. At the organizational level, we provide technical advice for implementation of the action report and developing a more gender-sensitive and market-driven business model, and which is actually very key in the Somalia context. This support includes now a guidance on the risk business continuity management, which is, as I said, very vital in the Somalia context. And ILO, as an ILO, also we further help the PDSPs integrate principles of adaptive management and further provide guidance on how to balance the economic and the social outcomes as well. So with these steps, we aim as the ILO and with our partners now, in this case SIDA, to actually ensure the sustainability of the PDSPs and ILO's interventions by enabling them to actually have access to resources and support while providing more gender responsive and market-driven products and services. particularly to women entrepreneurs now who are actually the target group for our project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abdul, very much. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their experience and for telling us about WeCheck. We have some questions. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask one question, and then any of our panelists who wish to answer it, just come out of mute and answer the question. I will ask you please to not take long to answer those, because we have some 4 or 5 questions, so we would like to get through all of them. Okay. So and thank you everyone so much for submitting questions. Also, the webinar is being recorded, and we're gonna share the recording of the call, and we're gonna share the presentation as well. So so you won't miss anything. So the first question that we have is from Anjali Patel. The question is, why is WeCheck tool targeted to business development service providers? And I want to marry this question with a question that anonymous attendee asked. What does it take for business development service providers to run this process? In terms of resources, worker hours, in terms of external facilitator, does the ILO run a register? How does it work? Who wants the floor? Charlene, please.
So thank you, Fernando, and thank you to the participants who asked those questions. So first of all, on why WeCheck is targeting BDSPs, it's for the simple reason to provide continuous support to SMEs and especially to women entrepreneurs in the country, because most of the time we have observed that BDSPs are donor-driven, and they depend a lot on technical and financial assistance from development actors. By undergoing the WeCheck process, they can set the foundation for their sustainability, and they can continue offering demand and market-driven services to SMEs and to women entrepreneurs with or without technical support from the development actors. And then what does it take for a BDSP to run this process? They need to have a dedicated team, an internal task team to do the assessment, the self-assessment. In terms of resources, working hours, I will give the example of Algeria, for instance, when they set the internal task team, they did the assessment within a period of 3 months, and the team was dedicating 1 day per week to do the assessment in terms of data collection and data analysis. So this is a process that can also vary depending on the BDSP, the capacity, the number of people employed, and also the resources available for conducting the WeCheck. It can be conducting between 6 to 1 year, depending on several factors, but it's a process that can be tailored to any BDSP depending on several factors that should be analyzed before the process is launched. And then in terms of the external facilitator, does the ILO run a registry? Yes, the external process facilitators who are certified are also recognized on the ILO databases made public, so that they can be recognized as such. And something to also note that the external process facilitator certification is valid within the time frame of the implementation of the WeCheck action report by the BDSP. When the certification has expired, the external process facilitator should claim for recertification, and this is contingent on submitting a case study on the impact of the BDSP services on its performance as BDSP, but also in the impact on improvement in women's businesses they have supported.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
A multi question with a lot of questions. So, and then I think if questions are not answered during this webinar, we can share later on along with the presentation responses to pending questions.
Yes, 100%. Thank you so much, Charlene. Another question I have from Rodrigue Raul Suchon or Sucon. What are the main innovations that WeCheck is having with respect to FAMOS? Who wants to take this? Adriana, please.
Charlene is being shy, but I can sum up quickly. So the first innovation that it's taken is that, and Charlene will correct me because this was her part of the presentation, but one thing is FAMOS used to be based on 6 main kind of assessment areas, and WeCheck has simplified that into 3 main areas. So clients and outreach, products and services, and strategies and operations. A second point is that WeCheck is really trying to emphasize the double bottom line. So looking at provision of better services for women entrepreneurs, but also looking at how the BDSPs can become more sustainable and can, you know, what the business case is as well. So we're looking both at the development and the business case. A third area is that we've incorporated a component of certification to the process, which is something new. And this certification takes place at 3 levels. So at the level of the BDSP, who has fully completed a cycle of the WeCheck process, at the level of the internal task team who has led the assessment, and at the level of the external process facilitators who can support BDSPs in conducting WeCheck. A next point would be that we now have the 3-step process, which is also a simplified version. So we now have this 3-step process, and we also have 2 core materials, which are the implementation guide and the tools manual. And I think the final one was the actors. So WeCheck has very, you know, there's a lot of acronyms and a lot of actors that are used, but we have very clearly defined actors with very clear roles that they undertake across the WeCheck process. So I guess it's just been a matter of fleshing out, of simplifying the process, and really developing those materials based on those 3 assessment areas. And Charlene can complement if I've missed something.
Charlene is giving you the thumbs up. So we're going to continue. Another question. Anonymous attendee says this was partially answered by the last panelist. I imagine that was Abdul, but what are some incentives or the incentives for BDSPs to do and to undergo WeCheck? Anyone want to? Yes, Abdul.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. I think, a country, which is like a Somalia, whereby the roles of women are actually, very much marginalized. This process becomes, very much, important. And again, also now, the mere essence of now taking the WeCheck process actually to make sure that, the women needs as well as now their perspectives are actually, captured in this kind of, in the works of these PDSPs. So a country like Somalia, whereby, it's a very much male-dominated, country, whereby all actually, the products which are actually, available with these PDSPs are actually aimed at now the male side of the society. Actually, this helps them, the organizations being able to actually provide more of sort of, products that are actually aligned and aimed at the women. So, for example, now I think one of the things that we have been getting from our the financial PDSP, the PDSP that you're actually supporting this process is actually them realizing and saying that, okay, by actually making sure that we go through this process, we are able to actually get more clients for the products that you actually we are able to offer to these target groups.
Super. Anyone wants to add anything to that? Okay, thank you so much. I have room for one or more or 2 more. I have one here from Irmas Case. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. How can we adapt and use WeCheck in resource and service limited settings like refugee hosting areas where level of inclusivity is limited? Adriana, please.
Hi, Ermias. Thanks for joining. It's great to see you. I think that one of the good things about WeCheck is that it's very adaptable. So the tools manual is very detailed and provides a level of support for organizations so that even with very limited capacity, they can follow those instructions and really follow those exercises to the T. And that really helps with organizations that have limited capacity or limited resources and time. I think another great thing about WeCheck is that while it does propose these key assessment questions, all of this can be definitely adapted to refugee settings. So for example, while WeCheck is very much focused on women entrepreneurs, another question could involve, for example, this question I provided on does it collect sex disaggregated data? This question could also be rephrased to see if BDSPs are also collecting disaggregated data based on the type of either refugees or host communities that they're serving. So while it might take some adaptation of the materials and questions, and while we do want to keep that gender sensitive and gender responsive aim as the core of WeCheck, I think that one of the great things is that it can definitely be adapted to the objectives set by the organization. And also the process, we've implemented this in organizations of different shapes, different sizes, different capacities. And so the process is very adaptable and flexible, and with adequate support from an EPF that's consistently there and that's very experienced in this field, then I think that it's definitely possible to implement in these contexts.
Thank you, Adriana. We have some more questions. I'm gonna sneak one more in. The rest of the questions, we have your names there, so we'll make sure to answer you directly to your questions. The last one that I want to sneak in is how our respect for cultural, this is from Suleika Ali Yusuf. She asks, how our respect for cultural sensitivity and literacy challenges taken into consideration regarding strategy and process of WeCheck to ensure success for women entrepreneurs who most need the services and are most vulnerable? Any takers? Yeah, Charlene, you have you're in mute. There you go.
Thank you, Fernando. I don't see this question on the screen. It's quite long. So is it a question from who?
Suleika Ali Yusuf. The question is, how are respect for cultural sensitivity and literacy challenges taken into consideration in the strategy and the process of WeCheck?
Okay, all right. So just one clarification about the WeCheck process. It's for like business development service providers, which means that the tool is not targeting women entrepreneurs. And if a BDS service provider, it's an organization which can conduct such an assessment. So we believe that they have a personnel within the organization who are kind of, who have a certain level of literacy, and they can conduct this process according to the rules set in the implementation guide and also the tools manuals. And if we are talking about them targeting women entrepreneurs with like basic level of literacy, they will also have some questions about the services and products, and also about the outreach strategy, how to make sure that the messages about the product and services are channeled to women entrepreneurs, even with a basic level of literacy, so that they are aware of the product and services offered by the organization, and they can also afford such services. And everything should be adapted. They have to answer the key assessment questions to make sure that this is a potential market for us, even if we have women who cannot read and write, but at least they can run a business, and then this is a market we can target, and we can develop products and services that can really respond to the needs of these people in this specific market.
Thank you so much. To Savitri, Brigitte, Jaimanot, and other people that we didn't answer, we will make sure to copy your questions, and you're subscribed in the list, so we'll answer those for you. But we have to come to an end. Before that, I would like to pass the word to Merten Sievers. Merten is the Global Coordinator for Entrepreneurship and Inclusive Markets. And Merten, if you could please share with us some closing remarks about WeCheck and about some of the discussion that we've had in this hour.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. Are you hearing me? Yes, I think
yes.
So. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to the presenters. Thanks a lot for the team that has invested a lot into developing this methodology, or redeveloping it if you want. I think what we've seen over the years is that there's still this big need for addressing sustainability challenges of business service providers. Many donor agencies or implementing agencies or NGOs or even governments come in and try to build capacity, but there's often a lack of kind of understanding of how in the long term this will be financially viable, how the right products will be offered, how you make sure that those products are inclusive, those products actually reach out to the women entrepreneurs you want to reach. So I think for that, this is why for us this product is so important, that we still think there's a big need of business service providers to become stronger in providing services to women entrepreneurs. What we see very often is that these are structures that often face the same difficulties like SMEs in terms of their internal accounting systems, in terms of their marketing strategies, in terms of their outreach to the right target group, their understanding of the target group, and how they charge for services, or not charge, but how that then influences their financial viability. So I think it's not enough. We've also seen that these organizations claim to be gender neutral when effectively there is a lot of discrimination for women on the labor market, and for women that are starting to run their businesses or trying to run a business. So we think that there's a lot that can be done to harness this often untapped potential by understanding that market better, and actually make some of these business service providers more sustainable in the long term. So I think that's why we've put it out there. That's where it should help. And as I think the different examples have shown, what is also important for us is not really a one size fits all, but it's something that that should address kind of the needs of different types of organizations of different sizes in very different situations, be it in a big capital, be it in the countryside, in a refugee camp. So we really try to make the tool as adaptable as possible to the local situation, because it really needs to respond to local circumstances, to specific maybe types of discrimination also that happen on local markets, and really needs to address those issues. I understand that we'll be ready by mid to end July with the final material. So we're also wanting to offer to everybody around the table or on this call, basically that we'll share the materials, but that we'd also appreciate any further inputs in terms of what can be done to improve them. And obviously we'd be happy to support the rollout of the tool or advise in terms of how can you actually make business service provider more sustainable and more responsive to this specific target audience of women entrepreneurs, to anybody that is on the call. So I'd be happy to work with you in taking this forward if there's any interest. Thanks.
Thank you, Merten, so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We will compile the questions that you're asking, and we'll share the answers to them when we share the link to the call and when we share the presentation, so we can all have those answered for all of us. If you have any other question, just please go and write to us at wedwed@ilo.org, or you can write directly to Charlene or Adriana. Her emails are right there. If you want to see some of the stuff that we're doing in women entrepreneurship development, please go and go into ilo.org/WED And do follow us in Twitter and Facebook to get information, news, and resources that we're constantly sharing. To all of you, thank you so much for being with us, for all of our panelists. Thank you so much for your time. I had a great time. I hope you also did. And have everyone a good afternoon, night, morning, and yeah, whatever you are.